Hello everyone, this is model number 8, episode 1, the Monogram Voyager from the mid-90s. My friend Zach and I put it together back in Cold Lake in early July of 2018, just before I went on my house hunting trip, and I couldn't resist test fitting it to make sure it would assemble completely before I went away. And as you can see, it works out pretty well. And then when I got back in late July, we used elastics to make sure the glue set while the ship was assembled completely, because that's how I transported it to my new posting. And funny story, the border guards actually pulled me over for the first time in must have been 7 years for a secondary inspection. They asked, "Oh, what was in the big box?" And I said, "Oh, that's my completely assembled model of the mid-90s USS Voyager. You want to see it?" And for some reason, they ended the inspection very quickly and were gone within 5 seconds and let me go on my way. So I don't know if Star Trek is border guard kryptonite, but it certainly seemed to serve that purpose on that day. So that's what I'll do in late May when I tell them I'm going to Wonderfest. But of course, they'll have had lots of Canadians crossing the border for Wonderfest by then on that weekend, so that response won't be too unusual. I used Grandpa's cedar chest to take all the different pictures of Voyager. After opening up the dining room curtain so you could see the ship in natural light, I had to source that polar light stand from somewhere else because the main one on the ship broke. This is emulating what they first saw when they entered DS9 and saw the ship from above. So there are the warp nacelles up with the ship on the starboard side. Here are the warp nacelles up on the ship from the port side, and that's the last picture of any model that was taken in Cold Lake, because next thing I knew, I started using my dining room table in Quebec as my model building workbench. So you can see here, and these are the last picture of the ship before it was painted, but first I gave it a white primer hull. And you can see that here from all angles. What I did when it was time to spray the top of the ship is I covered up the base with cardboard and wrapped the stand itself with the paper towel to protect it from getting paint smudged. And I think I did a pretty good job, although I might have ended up painting that stand black. We'll probably find out in later pictures and see if the black is indistinguishable from the plain black dome base. So there it is with its first coat of Krylon on the bottom of the ship. I used the lid of the gray bin to let it dry. Used the gray bin itself when I was doing the spray painting. And I did the same treatment for the top of the ship, as you can see here, covering the base, covering the stand, and then spray painting the ship with the Krylon chrome. So this will show all the angles of that, angles from the back. I tried to show angles you saw on the show, especially with the physical model. So you can see a few from the front here showing the secondary deflector dish. There's the main deflector. The next one should show the top of the saucer. There you go. That's better. And then you see the back of the ship again, right here. So I thought the Krylon gave a good view of the ship, a good color. I mean, this was 2018, so it was still... Actually, this might have been 2019 by now. But again, 1994 to 2019, that was also approximately 25 years. So it kind of fit. You see the Silver Anniversary Voyager tag on the stand there. And you can see the picture of me and William Shatner above the ship. So not too much detail painting yet. Mostly beauty shots of the ship. The detail painting will come later. And what I did is I started using the Tamiya tape to mask off. Now you can see all the detail paints beyond the ship on the upper left of your screen. You can also see them on the center of the screen on the right there. So those are all the folk art paints that I used to start painting the ship. I think I'd started painting the windows by now. You can see those. And then you start painting in the secondary deflector dish with the antique gold, Star Trek 50 years, and the light blue. You can see the red on the Bassard collector. So when the ship was big enough, I did not have to paint any parts on the sprue tree, like the torpedo launchers. I sprayed them. I painted them by hand on the ship, so any detail painting was done by hand. It was only later that I realized I could paint parts on the sprue tree. So you can see the entire painted saucer deflector dish there. So from this distance, it doesn't look like too much is painted, except perhaps the windows. But that will change in a moment. You'll see the next picture with the light blue nacelles masked off. Now the reason I used folk art paint is because I couldn't find light blue in Tamiya. And then I started painting in the phasers. You can see how they're masked off on the upper left of your picture. And of course, some of the details on the top of the bridge module. Now, because it didn't have a plain base color, I had to go over it a couple times in gold. You can see that here. Once I took the tape off the nacelle and put the gold in between it and the red, it turned out quite well. So you just have to find the color that matches what you see on screen. And of course, I did a random bit of color in there. There was no real set pattern. There's a deflector dish. Now that's before I'd settled on a gold or a proper blue. I realized a slightly darker blue worked best. So that's what I eventually adopted for the deflector dish itself. And you see I painted in the sensor palette, and you started doing antique gold on the escape pods. You can see the back phasers are colored in, so you're slowly getting the decals. Now Voyager had, especially the old Monogram Voyager, it's the RCS thrusters painted, had no Aztec decals. All it had is trim decals, stripes, phaser horseshoes, escape pods, and it numbered where every single one of them went. You can see the cutting map below the green towel. And I started painting black in the middle of the RCS thrusters. And there you go. I think I'm getting some of the gold stripe there, maybe some of the red on the phasers on the bottom of the ship. I did some metallic accents because it's a 25th anniversary ship. There's the phasers all painted, the transport emitter decals, so I started putting on decals at this stage, just a few. This video consists of all the pictures I took in 2018 and 2019. Part 2 will consist of all the pictures I took throughout 2020 and 2021. And episode 3 of Voyager will be what is currently episode 2, which is the completion video. You can see the completion of the painting in the shuttle bay in this picture. So I guess it's just a few beauty shots. Voyager approaching, so I tried to emulate the path of the physical model as it got closer to the camera. Of course, in my case, I just moved the camera closer to the model. The model itself didn't move. So you can see more detail as it's passing by. And of course, most of the time I had the nacelles raised up because this ship is one of the few that had the option to do that. Then you can see the long view of my entire model workbench there. So there it is from the port side. So that is the end of episode 1 of model number 8, the 677 scale Monogram Voyager. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you next week for part 2. Bye-bye.